Hey guys, Argent here with the 250 subscriber special. Well, actually, it's more like 143, but we're close to 150 and we'll get there in probably a couple days. I just like to start off with, as always, thanking you all for your support. You guys are great. When I started this project, I never thought I'd get any comments, let alone that I'd get the kind words so many people have offered. I can't thank you guys enough. It means a lot to me. Um, this whole process has just been very positive for me personally. Um, Met a lot of good guys from this, a lot of good people. Helps with the sense of isolation you have with having unconventional views or just being a bit of a misfit. It also helped to get into some fights and to get attacked by people online and that kind of thing. It toughens you up. It gets you desensitized. It's good to be desensitized to people insulting you, because it just makes you tougher. And once you've gotten used to it, and once it doesn't bother anymore, it's just this amazing sense of freedom. So that's just starting off. Just thanks, guys. So I wanted to talk a bit about kind of my approach, I guess. My approach has always been, I guess, threefold, or maybe fourfold, depending on how you count it. First and foremost, I always try to have a sense of humor. Um, I know sometimes people might say, oh, some of the stuff you do is offensive, or some of the stuff you do is really, like, you exaggerate a bit. You sometimes bend things to fit the narrative or something like that. Like, I know a couple people were saying my one on Snape, I exaggerated a bit in parts. Okay, that's true, but it's I exaggerate for humor purpose. I think it's funnier. Sometimes if you're trying to make a point, you have to use a bit of hyperbole. When like that's kind of like that's a style of humor. That's like what the AVGN and the Nostalgia Critic do, and they're kind of where I got my style of humor from to a large extent. Them and Plinkett, because if you notice, I tend to have a pretty monotone voice, especially when I'm making jokes or saying something just really like out there. Because my sense of humor is can be kind of wacky and extreme, but it's also very dry. So a lot of the time, if you think I'm saying something just really out there, it probably means I'm joking. It's just I tend to try to say everything in the same tone of voice when I'm doing that, just to for humor purposes. So yeah, I do stretch things sometimes. I do hyperbolize a bit. I do exaggerate a bit. I like to think it's fairly obvious when I'm doing that. Or if it's not that obvious, it's not that obvious because it's largely for humor purposes. I'm really not that extreme. I am by the standards of where I live, but aside from the times I get angry, generally speaking, if I'm saying something really out there or just doing something like the Snape video, I think is a good example because I think there is a lot of the parallels. I exaggerated or maybe stretched it in a couple places, but that's just kind of part of the humor. And I think it's fairly straightforward. So yeah, I always have tried to have a sense of humor. It's a big problem I think with a lot of people, kind of on the alt right and SJWs too. A lot of people just don't really have a sense of humor, and they're just kind of ultra serious. And I'm not saying like you shouldn't be serious about it because a lot of this stuff is serious. I'm very serious about my faith. I'm very serious about my political views. But at the same time, I think you need a sense of humor to keep from going crazy, to keep from just drowning in a well of resentment and hatred. I think humor is a gift God gave us to keep us sane. Because if we can't laugh at the absurdity of just how bad the world is sometimes, of just how evil people are, then you just go crazy. Like that's what China Economy Strong is about. Just how horrific and just how bizarre the stuff they do in China is. So if you make fun of like ISIS is funny. ISIS is like the worst thing I could imagine. but it's cartoonishly evil. They do like Doctor Evil style shit. Like, you know how they put some guys in a cage and lowered the cage in the water, and all I could think of was like an Austin Powers with the ridiculously slow dipping mechanism. And like, you gotta laugh because if it just sinks in all the way, you're just gonna go crazy, and you're just gonna not be able to function. You're just gonna be constantly depressed. And that's what I think TRS taught me, and I guess I've just always been like that. But having a sense of humor, I think, makes you a lot more resilient to bad news, to just the harshitude of life. And I think Dennis Prager said it best that if you want to get through life in one piece and as a sane and functional person, you have to have a very dark and twisted sense of humor. So that's number one. Number two, I just try to be real with you guys. Um, I just try to basically just give you my opinion. If I don't know something, I try to admit I don't know something. I just try to be upfront. I try to be as much as possible unpretentious. I try to include my sources or say who I'm quoting. I don't really pretend to be some master intellectual. I'm just a very well read, and I think it's fair to say I'm well read considering the number of books I've read. Um, Guy in my 20s who has a degree in political science with a minor in philosophy. So I've studied that. I've studied theology at a university level, and I've studied a couple other things, and I'm just kind of a lifelong aggregator of knowledge. As you may have noticed from the channel, I have a lot of different interests, and I do try my best to be informed about them and knowledgeable about them. And a lot of the time, if it seems I'm kind of grasping at straws or just kind of unsure, I think it is productive sometimes to just share my thought process. I always find that interesting, more so than just giving your opinion to try and that's probably why my videos are often quite long. So I try to share like the thought process I have and kind of share how I'm working through something. And I do, generally speaking, I don't normally make notes, but I will, and that's not because I'm lazy. It's just because I have a learning disability, and it makes it very hard for me to retain information in that way. I'm like 100% auditory learner, so I will, generally speaking, for the video, spend a while thinking on it, and I'll come up with good points. I have a very good working like memory for that kind of thing. It's kind of a necessity since I'm, yeah, as I said, I kind of have a disability that makes it very difficult. When I was in school in Canada, they have mandatory testing for learning disabilities and intellectual capacity. So I'm not bragging, but I score 99.99% on overall intellectual capacity, but 10% on handwriting and spelling, and I think like 5% on art because I have like a dexterity problem. So if you ever notice, I will often make spelling errors or I'll mix up the theirs or the effect and that kind of thing. I just have an issue with letter processing and that kind of thing. And I actually, like, when I look at sentences like that, I actually can't tell. It just looks the same. Effect and affect look the same to me because I just read it. My mind just reads it phonetically. But anyways, my point is I try to be real. I know Argent Templar is really LARPy, but aside from that, I try not to LARP too hard. I try not to just put on airs and kind of be pretentious and be something I'm not. Um, I'm actually probably more honest on this channel than I am in real life because I can just kind of give my like opinion on stuff. Um, but no, this is what you, well, you don't see because I don't show my face, but what you hear is largely what you get as far as what I'm like in real life. So I just kind of try to be real with you guys. I try to work through something. I might meditate on something. I might just do a video and throw it out there and see maybe if people have some thoughts on it. I don't claim to know anything. I don't claim to be an expert on everything. I have my opinions, and I like to think I've thought about them a fair bit and that I've done research on them. But I'm always willing to hear other arguments. Sometimes I just won't argue with people. Just I've done a video on that. It's largely just because some people you just are not coming to have a discussion in good faith, and it's pretty obvious that they're not. So those are kind of the main things. The other thing is I always try to be very gracious and polite to my fans. If I can say fans, if it's not too arrogant to say fans. Subscribers, people who take time out of their schedule to watch my videos, and especially the people who take time out of their schedule to leave me comments. And many of you have left me very nice comments, and I frankly kind of feel embarrassed by them. Because I kind of feel like I'm just an amateur rambling on a lot of the time. So if you get any enjoyment or education out of my work, I really appreciate that. But ultimately, the thing you always have to keep in mind if you're doing something like this is you're nothing without your subscribers. You're nothing without the people who view you. Because that's kind of the whole point. I mean, there's other reasons for doing this. It's cathartic. It helps me to get my thoughts organized. It helps your memory to kind of go over stuff again. It's good to work on your public speaking skills and that kind of thing. But ultimately, um, a lot. It's all about your listeners, and that doesn't mean you always do everything they ask you to do. But if they ask you to do something or they make a suggestion or something, you at least owe them a polite response. As much as possible, I try to thank people who leave nice comments or at least give them a thumbs up, because really, you have to appreciate the time these people take to comment, to watch your videos, to dedicate a small part of their life to do that. No one makes them do that. No one compels them to do that. If they do it, it's a sign of respect to you, and you owe them all the respect in the world. That's an issue I have with. I was talking to a friend of mine, like guys like Michael Savage, who are kind of dicks to their fans. Uh, if you don't have time to talk to them, that's fine, but just be nice to them. Like especially if you're a larger channel, I get you don't have time to respond to comments. Maybe you have time to respond to one or two, but just always, I think you always have to be nice to your fans. You always have to be appreciative, and you always have to be kind to them. Because they're the guys who, and girls, I guess, although I think my viewership is like 95% male. Maybe there's a couple waifus in there. But they're the people who make everything possible. And I just want to give you guys a thank you. I don't want you to think I'm just trying to kiss up to you by doing these. I'm just trying to be gracious. I just another thing Dennis Prager taught me is that gratitude is necessary for happiness. If you want to have a good life and a good sense of mental health, you have to learn to express gratitude and accept when people do nice things for you. And so that's kind of an exercise I try to do through this because I do appreciate you guys, and I try to do this every now and again. Anyways, once again, thank you. You guys rock the world. God bless. This is Argent Templar signing out.